This is not a message to be consumed in passing, nor is it meant to distract or entertain the restless mind. It is not crafted to add another layer of noise to the endless scroll. If you come here hurried, chasing fragments of time, then let this go. But if there is even a faint stirring within you, a longing to pause, to listen not with ears alone but with the marrow of your being, then step away from the clamor of the world. Leave behind the ceaseless rhythm of distractions and enter with full attention. Not because these words carry weight, but because what they point to is beyond them, something that reveals itself only in stillness. Stillness requires surrender, and surrender requires courage. If you are ready, leave behind the tyranny of time and begin. We have long believed that thought is a tool we wield, a mechanism of will, as though the mind were a servant awaiting command. Yet when the gaze turns inward, even for a breath, another truth stirs. Thoughts do not wait to be summoned. They arise of their own accord. One moment there is silence, and the next an image appears, a memory unfurls, a plan sketches itself into the darkness. Effortless, unbidden, already complete. Yet the reflex to claim ownership runs deep. At the instant a thought blooms, the mind proclaims, "This is mine. I am the one thinking this." But who is this I? Can it be found, seen apart from the very thought it grasps? Look closely, and the thinker dissolves into shadow, nothing more than another thought masquerading as the author. It is as if a figure within a dream believed it was scripting the dream itself, even as it stumbled through the scenes. But the deeper truth is starker, simpler, and far more liberating. Thinking is not happening by us, but within us. When seen in this light, the mind is no longer a sovereign creator, but a current, a restless wind coursing through boundless sky. Sometimes gentle, sometimes violent, yet the sky itself does not tremble. That sky is awareness, unbounded, unscarred, and utterly still. This is not a theory. It is an immediacy available now, if only you notice. Did you summon the last thought, or did it arrive uninvited? If a voice speaks within, who is it that hears? There is no need for an answer, only the noticing. The sensation of being the thinker unravels when you remain quietly with what is true. The sages across ages point to this. What you are is not hidden in thought, but in the silence that perceives thought. You are not the mind's captive, nor its product. You are the vastness in which it flickers and fades. The more clearly this is seen, the less gravity the mind's stories hold, until they pass like drifting clouds, neither pursued nor resisted. Ramana Maharshi pierced the veil with a single question: who am I? Not to be answered in concept, but to burn away illusion. The one who claims to think is only a shadow thrown by a greater light. When the question dissolves, what remains is not emptiness, but pure being, simple, radiant, untouched. So we pause here, not to conclude, but to begin anew. There is nothing to strive toward, but everything to recognize. We will not chase thoughts nor silence them. We will sit in the stillness from which they emerge. Here, in the unbroken presence that needs no effort to be, the journey begins. The words are not the destination. They are the gate through which you may pass into a silence that was never absent and a self that was never lost. Notice now how the mind unfolds. Thoughts arrive as if from nowhere, like whispers rising from beneath still water. One moment there is only quiet, and then a memory, a fragment, a flicker of a voice, already complete, already speaking without permission or command. This is their nature, self-born, unclaimed, yet we hurry to crown ourselves as their authors. I am the one who thought this, says the mind. But search for this I, and it vanishes into mist. Every attempt to seize it uncovers only another thought, another mask, another echo. The so-called thinker is never found. It is but a mirage of the very desert it imagines itself crossing. In this recognition, something begins to loosen. The mind is no longer a sovereign monarch, but a restless tide moving through boundless space. Its storms rise and fall, yet the space in which they swirl remains untouched. You can feel it if you pause, awareness itself, infinite, unmoved, serene. Not a concept, not an idea, but a direct and living presence. This awareness does not push thoughts forward, nor does it restrain them. It is the silent witness, the unshaken ground beneath every tremor. It is here even now, more intimate than breath, more ancient than time. Do you see how the habit of ownership begins to dissolve in this light? The thought comes unbidden, the image fades without clinging, the story collapses when left unfed. Each wave rises and falls, but the ocean is never burdened by its spray. What you are is not the cresting thought, but the vastness it momentarily rides upon. You are the sky in which clouds drift, the mirror that reflects but never holds, the screen upon which all stories play, yet leaves no trace of fire, flood, or sorrow. This truth is not earned by effort, nor is it held by memory. It is glimpsed in surrender, in stillness, in the willingness to simply be. Let each thought appear as it will, like a bird passing through an endless sky. Watch it without pursuit, without resistance, without the need to claim. What remains when the bird is gone? The sky itself, unmarked, infinite, free. That sky is what you are, and it has never moved. So listen now to the silence beneath the whisper. Feel the quiet in which every sound arises. The mind will insist that it speaks for you, but you are the one who hears. Let that hearing deepen until the voice fades into the background and only presence remains. Here, in this recognition, lies the first taste of freedom, the freedom of not needing to be the author of thought, but the vastness that allows thought to appear and disappear. There are moments when memory does not feel like the past at all, but like a hand reaching through eternity to touch us now. A remembrance that is not bound by years, not carried by thought, but breathing like a living presence beneath the surface of awareness. It is as though something ancient within us longs to be recognized, to rise from the silence and remind us of what was never truly lost. This is not nostalgia, nor the faint ache of longing for days gone by. It is the sacred pulse of truth calling from beyond time. In the hush of stillness, such remembrance reveals itself, not through images of childhood, nor through the fragments of yesterday's story, but as a recognition of what has always been here. It is the same awareness that gazed through your eyes when you were small, the same presence that remained when laughter faded, when tears dried, when faces came and went. Beneath all change, something unchanging abides, and when it stirs, the soul feels the echo of home. Yet the mind often mistakes this remembrance for thought, wrapping it in words and explanations. It tries to define, to label, to capture the ineffable. But truth cannot be confined in such narrow vessels. It is felt like a flame in the chest, like the gentle weight of light settling on the skin. It is heard in silence more than in words, in the pause between heartbeats, in the stillness between thoughts. What remembers is not the brain, but the being, not the story, but the presence that contains all stories. There is a sweetness in this recognition, and also a gravity, For to remember who you are is to see how much has been forgotten. To awaken is to notice the layers of dust that covered the jewel, the countless veils mistaken for the self. Yet even this forgetting was not a mistake. It was part of the dance, part of the path by which the remembrance gains its depth, its weight, its power. A jewel buried long shines brighter when it is finally uncovered, so pause here. Feel the quiet fire of remembrance burning gently within. Do not rush to name it. Do not clutch at it as though it could be held. Let it radiate through you, soft but undeniable. You are not recalling a moment from time. You are remembering yourself beyond time. This is the sacred remembrance, not something regained, but something revealed. A truth that was never absent, only unseen. A presence that has been waiting, endlessly patient, for you to look its way. Healing does not arrive with thunder, nor with sudden brilliance. It comes softly, like dawn seeping through the cracks of night, quiet and patient, asking nothing but willingness. The soul, bruised by the weight of fear and the fractures of forgetting, does not mend through force. It mends as the earth does after winter, slowly, with warmth, with a tender breath that asks no demand. The art of healing is not conquest. It is surrender to the deeper rhythm that has been whispering beneath all pain. At first, the wounds may seem endless, scattered like shards across the landscape of memory. We feel them in the body as tension, in the heart as heaviness, in the mind as restless echoes. But if we dare to stay, to breathe within the ache rather than flee from it, something remarkable begins. The wound itself opens as a doorway, and what spills forth is not more pain, but a hidden light. For within the fracture lies the invitation to wholeness. Within the breaking lies the path to seeing what was never truly broken. The gentle art of healing does not seek to erase scars. It honors them. Just as the tree carries its rings, each mark of storm and drought woven into its strength, so too are we shaped by what has been endured. The scar is not an absence of beauty, but a testimony of survival, a map etched into the skin of being, showing where light entered when we thought only darkness reigned. In truth, what we call a wound is often the place where the soul deepens, where compassion is born. To heal is to stop fighting the current, to let the river wash through. It is to sit beside the inner child who trembles in shadow, not with answers, but with presence. It is to listen, to cradle, to let the silence do its work. Healing cannot be rushed, cannot be forced, for it moves at the pace of love itself. And love does not hurry. Love waits, it lingers, it abides even when we resist, until we finally soften enough to let it in. And so, the art of healing is really the art of remembering what you are. Whole, untouched, luminous. Beneath the scars, beneath the stories, beneath even the ache of longing, there remains a core that has never been harmed. It is from this place that the gentle tide of restoration rises. To heal, then, is not to become something new, but to awaken again to what has always been whole. It is not the end of suffering that defines healing, but the rediscovery of the light that was never lost. Fear first arrives as a shadow, stretching long across the corridors of the mind. It whispers of danger, of loss, of endings that have not yet come. It coils around the heart, tightening like an invisible hand, and convinces us that to live is to shrink. Yet beneath its sharpness lies a strange invitation, for fear is not the final word. It is the raw ore awaiting the fire, the unshaped lead that longs to be transmuted into gold. The alchemy of fear is the alchemy of courage, But courage does not mean the absence of trembling. It means stepping through the trembling into something vast. When we resist fear, it multiplies, feeding on the struggle. It grows teeth from our avoidance, claws from our denial. But when we turn toward it with steady eyes, something unexpected happens. Its edges blur, its power softens. What once loomed like a storm reveals itself as vapor, rising and falling in the light of awareness. To meet fear is not to battle it, but to hold it in the furnace of stillness until it melts, revealing the hidden radiance beneath. In truth, fear is only the shadow cast by love's absence, and when love returns, the shadow dissolves. Alchemists of old spoke of transmutation as the greatest work: lead into gold, matter into spirit. But the greater alchemy lies not in metals, but in the human heart. Every fear carried, the fear of being unseen, the fear of loss, the fear of death itself, can be placed within the crucible of awareness. And in that vessel, with the steady flame of presence, fear transforms into wisdom. The terror of impermanence becomes the sweetness of each fleeting breath. The dread of death becomes the wonder of being alive at all. To practice the alchemy of fear is to see it not as a barrier, but as a teacher. Each trembling is a bell, calling us deeper into the truth that cannot be shaken. The mind may say, "I am afraid," but the awareness that sees the fear remains untouched. That awareness is the fire itself, silent, steady, unconsumed by the flames it contains. Thus, fear does not end by being destroyed. It ends by being transformed. It becomes the doorway through which the soul steps into its own vastness. The same trembling that once chained us becomes the very current that sets us free. Fear, seen clearly, is not the enemy of awakening, but its secret ally. For only when we have walked through our darkest shadow can we truly recognize the brilliance of the light. Life whispers to us in ways the mind often resists. We imagine the world as a place to conquer, to master, to bend to our will, yet it is we who are being shaped. Each encounter, each loss, each fleeting joy is part of a hidden curriculum, a lesson not written in books, but inscribed into the marrow of existence. The soul is the student, the heart the classroom, and every breath is a page turning in the great text of becoming. What appears random, cruel, or merciful is never without purpose. Behind the shifting scenes of circumstance lies an unseen teacher, one who fashions lessons with perfect precision. The curriculum is rarely comfortable. It does not flatter the ego, nor soothe the restless desire for permanence. Instead, it carves, it strips away, it humbles. A betrayal reveals where trust was placed too shallowly. A loss shows the futility of holding what was never ours to keep. Even joy teaches, reminding us that beauty cannot be clung to, only touched in passing. The soul's education is not about acquisition, but about surrender, a slow, patient unlearning of all we mistook ourselves to be. At times, the lessons arrive cloaked in silence. We search for meaning, and silence offers none. Yet, it is within this wordless emptiness that the deepest truths are taught. Silence instructs not through answers, but through dissolution. It loosens the grip of questions until the need to ask them fades. Other lessons come in fire, through upheaval and breaking. These burn away what cannot endure, revealing what was eternal all along. The soul's curriculum is both gentle and severe. Gentle because it leads us home, severe because it will not allow us to remain asleep. And so the path unfolds, lesson after lesson, chapter after chapter. Some are repeated again and again until we finally listen. Others pass through once, like a comet flashing across the night sky, leaving us forever altered. No lesson is wasted, no experience meaningless. Even the smallest moment, a glance, a word, the breath before sleep, carries within it the possibility of awakening. To live with this recognition is to approach life with reverence. The ordinary becomes extraordinary, the painful becomes purposeful. Every stranger becomes a teacher, every challenge a doorway, every silence a mirror. The curriculum of the soul is infinite, and its aim is not knowledge, but transformation. One day we will see that what we called obstacles were invitations, what we called suffering was initiation, and what we called loss was only love reshaping itself into another form. There comes a moment when the familiar world begins to tremble, when the shapes we thought solid dissolve into smoke. The veil that has long covered our sight, woven from beliefs and fears, begins to thin. At first, the unveiling feels like loss, the loss of certainty, of roles carefully rehearsed, of stories told so often they became mistaken for truth. Yet it is not the truth that is stripped away, but illusion. The veil does not protect us, it blinds us. And when it is lifted, light rushes in like a flood. The unveiling rarely happens all at once. It is more often a gradual unraveling, like dawn breaking over a long night. First, a sliver of light pierces the fabric, then another and another, until suddenly what was hidden cannot be denied. In that light, we see the outlines of our lives differently. What we once defended reveals itself as hollow. What we once avoided reveals itself as necessary. It is a tender violence to lose the world as we knew it, only to discover the world as it truly is. At times the veil resists. It clings to us like a second skin, whispering familiar comforts. Do not question, do not leave, do not look beyond. But the call of truth is relentless. It pulls, it tears, it insists. And though the tearing feels like death, it is the birth of seeing. The eyes grow accustomed to clarity, the heart to freedom. We realize we have never truly been lost, only dreaming within shadows. When the veil lifts, silence deepens. It is not the silence of absence, but the silence of revelation. Words falter, for they were woven into the veil itself. In their place comes a still knowing, a clarity that does not explain, but simply is. It is like standing before a vast horizon after years in a closed room. The expanse cannot be spoken, only lived, and in this unveiling, a paradox blooms. We see that the veil itself was part of the lesson, the struggle to see through it, the longing it evoked, the strength it demanded. Without the veil, there could be no unveiling. Without blindness, no vision. Thus we do not curse it. We bow to it, even as it falls away. The lifting of the veil is not an end, but an initiation, the first glimpse of what has always been waiting, patient, radiant, eternal. All our lives, we craft masks. Some are painted with ambition, others carved from fear. They are not born of malice, but of survival, a way to walk among others, to protect the fragile flame of the self from winds we cannot control. Yet masks, no matter how ornate, cannot endure forever. Sooner or later, the surface begins to crack. The colors fade. The disguise grows heavy, and the soul beneath strains for air. The mask clings to us, whispering that it is who we are. It promises safety in exchange for silence, belonging in exchange for forgetting. But each promise carries a price. The longer we hide, the deeper the distance from our own essence. And when the mask finally begins to dissolve, it feels like an unraveling of the very self. Shame rises like smoke. Fear presses close. For to be seen without a mask is to risk rejection. And yet, paradoxically, to risk being loved for the first time. The dissolution is not gentle. It often comes in moments of loss, heartbreak, or unbearable honesty. The mask slips, and what we swore to conceal stands revealed. At first, the exposure burns. It feels raw, unbearable. But as the disguise crumbles, light pours into the spaces once hidden. The soul breathes again, unencumbered, as though it has been waiting lifetimes for this nakedness. Without the mask, the face beneath may seem unfamiliar. We do not immediately recognize ourselves. We mistake the silence for emptiness, when in truth it is fullness, a fullness no mask could contain. Gradually, we see that what we feared to reveal is precisely what the world longed to meet. The heart aches not for perfection, but for authenticity, not for the mask, but for the living truth behind it. And so, the dissolution becomes an offering. The false layers fall away, not to expose weakness, but to unveil strength, the strength of simply being what we are. When the mask is gone, there is no role left to perform, no script left to follow. There is only presence, raw and radiant. To live unmasked is to walk in the world as a flame walks through darkness, not trying to burn, only to shine. Life does not move in straight lines. It curves, bends, and folds back upon itself, weaving patterns too vast for the eye to catch at once. What we thought was an ending often reveals itself as a beginning in disguise. What we believed was loss returns as gift, reshaped, renewed. In this, the circle shows its perfection. Every path, no matter how winding, leads us back to the same sacred ground, to ourselves. The completion of the circle is not a triumphant victory, but a soft arrival. It feels like returning home after a long wandering, where the familiar walls seem both unchanged and utterly transformed. The questions that once burned with urgency now dissolve, not because they are answered, but because they are no longer needed. The circle teaches us that the journey itself was the answer, that every step carried us toward this inevitable recognition of wholeness. At times, the circle appears cruel. We encounter the same pain, the same mistakes, again and again, as though bound to an endless repetition. Yet with each return, something has shifted. The heart, once raw, is now more tender. The mind, once stubborn, is now more open. Even suffering repeated refines us, polishing the stone of the self until it begins to shine. Thus, the circle is not punishment, but instruction, drawing us closer to the truth each time we trace its arc. And then comes the moment of recognition. There was never a break in the circle. The fragments we mourned were illusions. The separations we swore were real dissolve like mist. Everything was always connected, each joy and sorrow a thread in the same vast weaving. The completion is not about returning to where we began, but about realizing we never left. To stand within the circle completed is to feel both the fragility and the eternity of life. Fragility, because all forms fade. Eternity, because what fades is always reborn. It is a reminder that our task is not to escape the circle, but to walk it with reverence, knowing that every breath, every fall, every rising is part of the whole. And when the circle closes, we are not diminished. We are fulfilled. There are voices born of the world, loud and insistent, clamoring for our attention with promises and fears. They rise and fall like waves upon the shore, each one crashing, fading, and forgotten. But beneath them, older than the seas themselves, there is another voice, a voice beyond time. It does not shout. It does not persuade. It does not vanish. It it waits, patient, in the silence that lies beneath all sound. This voice does not carry words in the way we know them. It speaks in currents of knowing, in sensations that bypass thought and anchor directly in the marrow of the soul. Sometimes it comes as a whisper in the stillness before sleep, or as a resonance felt in the chest when all else is quiet. At other times, it emerges in the midst of chaos, a sudden clarity that slices through confusion like lightning through a storm. The voice beyond time is not other than us. It is not a teacher above, nor a master outside. It is the essence of our being, the echo of what we have always been. To hear it is not to acquire something new, but to remember something we never lost. And yet, remembering is never casual. It reshapes everything. Once heard, even once, the noise of the world loses its absolute grip. Still, the temptation to doubt it comes quickly. The mind asks, was that real? Was it only imagination? But the truth of this voice does not depend on belief. It is not fragile, not fleeting. It abides like mountains abide, unshaken by the weather of thought. To listen is not to strain, but to release, to surrender the effort to understand, and instead allow ourselves to be carried by it, like a river carrying a leaf. And so, when the voice calls, whether in thunder or in whisper, our task is not to argue or to question. Our task is to fall silent, to let its resonance deepen, to let it carve away all that is not true. In the end, the voice beyond time reveals itself not as something we hear, but as what we are. Eternal presence, speaking through us, with us, as us. A song without beginning or end. Life, when seen too closely, often appears fragmented. A loose strand here, a knot there, colors that seem to clash without reason. In moments of pain, the dark threads dominate, and we wonder what possible purpose such shadows could serve. Yet step back, even for a breath, and a deeper vision begins to reveal itself. The strands are not scattered, they are woven. A design emerges, faint at first, but unmistakably present. The great weaving is the unseen loom on which our existence is stretched. Every meeting, every loss, every sudden joy or quiet sorrow, each is a thread, pulled through the fabric by hands we cannot see. Golden strands of love intertwine with darker fibers of struggle, and together they create a pattern that no single thread could form alone. Even what seems broken, when woven, becomes essential to the strength of the whole. The mystery lies in this. We are not only the threads, but also the pattern itself. The same awareness that witnesses the weaving is the one guiding it. To recognize this is to see that nothing is wasted, nothing is random. Even the knots, the tangles, the imperfections hold their place in the larger symmetry. From within the weave, the path feels uncertain, but from beyond, it is a perfect and inevitable unfolding. And so we live suspended in paradox, both limited to our single thread and yet secretly the hand that weaves them all. To touch this truth is to soften into trust, to allow the strands of our days to be drawn where they must, even when the meaning is not yet clear. For the loom is vast, and its rhythm is older than time itself. In the end, the great weaving is not something to decipher, but to surrender into. We are already part of its design, already shimmering within its endless tapestry. The colors that seemed opposed are revealed as harmony, the fragments as unity. And when the cloth is finally lifted, it will not be the work of another we behold, but the expression of our own eternal hand. There comes a moment when the stillness that watches is no longer enough. A stirring arises, gentle yet insistent, the call to participate in the unfolding of the world. To stand only as witness is to know peace, but to step into creation is to know communion. Life does not ask us to choose between silence and action. It invites us to let one flow into the other, as breath flows into breath. The art of co-creation is not the grasping at outcomes, nor the frantic shaping of reality to our will. It is the quiet recognition that every thought, every word, every gesture is already a brushstroke on the canvas of existence. To awaken to this is to become deliberate, not in the sense of control, but in the sense of alignment. We no longer paint with blind hands. We paint with eyes open, guided by the same light that moves the stars. Each choice becomes a seed cast into the fertile soil of the present. Some sprout quickly, others lie hidden until their season comes, but all are woven into the living tapestry of tomorrow. Fear plants thorns, love plants gardens. The question is not whether we create, for we cannot help but create, but whether we do so unconsciously, scattering shadows, or consciously shaping beauty. To co-create is to dance with the unseen, to listen for its rhythm and move accordingly. It is less a matter of force than of surrender, less about imposing form than about revealing the form already written in silence. Like a sculptor uncovering the figure hidden in stone, we chip away not to build, but to reveal what has always been waiting to emerge. And in this dance, something miraculous is seen. The creator and creation are not two. The hands that shape are the same that are shaped. The light that guides is the same that is revealed. To live as a co-creator is not to claim power, but to recognize that the power has always been ours, not as possession, but as participation. In the end, nothing was truly gained, and nothing was truly lost. The path you have walked was not a road to somewhere else, but a slow unveiling of what had never been hidden. Every thought, every silence, every pause was only pointing you back here, to the stillness that breathes beneath all movement. The river has circled back to its source, and the source is not far, not distant. It is the very heart of your own being. The stories of the mind dissolve like mist at dawn, yet the light that remains was never absent. It shines not as something to hold, but as the quiet radiance of existence itself. You are not a seeker standing at the threshold, nor a traveler lost along the way. You are the space in which all journeys arise, and the home to which they always return. Let the final veil fall now. Let the longing itself rest. There is nowhere left to go, no final step to take, no horizon waiting to be crossed. What you are is here, timeless, unbroken, whole. Even as life continues, even as thoughts appear and fade, this truth does not move. So let this be the closing and the opening at once. A circle completed, and yet without beginning or end. The silence you touch now is the same silence that was with you before the first word, and it will remain after the last echo fades. Stay here, breathe here, live here. For here is the eternal return, the quiet flame of being that never goes out, the song without beginning, the sky without boundary. And in that infinite stillness, you are home.